everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about how I revised for my GCSE sciences to enable me to get 9s in biology, chemistry and physics, because I did triple science. So I've broken this down into like 4 sections on how I revised. So I've got before class, during class, after class / long term, so like what I did at the weekend, and then actually what I did before an exam, so the night before, the morning before an exam, what I did then. Obviously these tips are what I did. That does not mean that they're gonna all work for you, but I thought I would share what I did because some people might be a bit lost as to what to do, because it is quite daunting when you think about all the other subjects you've got to do. You want something concise, you want something that's going to work for you, and you want something that's not going to take hours and hours and hours and hours of your time without retaining any information. So without me waffling too much, we'll get on to the video. So before class, now the first thing that I cannot stress enough is that you need to be prepared. There is no point turning up to a classroom with like a half ripped book and one pen that's like half chewed. That's not going to work. I mean, you're going to still be able to write, but you're not going to be able to do it to the best of your ability, and you're not going to be able to make notes that you're going to, look back on and actually want to read. So what I took with me was pens, pencils, highlighters, a ruler, a calculator, and if you want some post-it notes, and I'll explain that later, and also my revision guide. So I had the CGP revision guides, which a lot of people were taking to their lessons, and I started doing the same thing, and I quickly realised it was really helpful, and that's one of the points I'll explain later. But also before lesson, as in like the morning before school, I got in at 8 o'clock and school started at 8:30, so I had half an hour to kill. So occasionally we would just chat with friends, but I would also read through certain parts of the textbooks. I was struggling a lot on the motor effect in physics, and it took me a long time to get my head around it. So I spent a few mornings just rereading the textbook and just picking out the key points, reciting them, jotting them down on a scrap piece of paper, organising like different ways that I can remember it, stuff like that. Reading before a class or before the school day starts kind of gets your mind in the zone of what you're doing that day. So I also used to read back on like old class notes, like the class previously or the lesson previously, just to like refresh what we've been talking about, because they're probably going to lead on from that. So yeah, those were my 2 things that I did before class. So now during the actual lesson, I would write down the date, because that is also important. Say if you're talking with your friends and you're like, oh, what were we doing on that day? You can all look back in your books and know exactly what you're on about. But I also titled my work, so whatever the teacher put on the board, they probably do have like a PowerPoint. Whatever they put at the top of the PowerPoint, you write down in your book because it's important, and it helps with you when you're just flicking through trying to find a random answer a couple of weeks later. It can be really helpful. So yeah, always title your work. I know it sounds like a really simple thing, but sometimes people just forget the simple stuff, and it can be really helpful. Also, when the teacher's actually going through a certain topic, make concise notes. So if you don't have your revision guide, I would always write down a few bullet points about each topic, not paragraphs, so not the whole thing that's on the PowerPoint, and not every single word that your teacher's saying, but write down key things that you stand out. They might be highlighted on the PowerPoint, the teacher might stress them, or they might go into further depth about a certain subject, which in that case means that it's probably quite important. But yeah, concise notes. Don't write essays and essays, because A, you're never going to read through all of that later on, and B, you might get lost in your making your notes and not actually pay attention to what the teacher's saying, which could be quite valuable. So you've made concise notes, and you've titled your work, and you're prepared with all of your stuff. Now with diagrams, so there are obviously a lot of diagrams in science, no matter what subject you're in. I really recommend rough drawing. Make it really quick, really easy to write or draw without spending so many minutes on it and not actually getting any of the information down. The most important part is the general shape of it and then annotations. That's all you need to worry about. And if it's that important, it will be in your revision guide. So make sure that you don't spend too much time on drawing out pretty diagrams when in reality it's either in the textbook, in which case you don't need it anyway, and or you don't need to like draw it down to that degree of accuracy, or annotate it well enough so that you understand it. So a lot of people are taking their revision guides into lessons, but they're never actually using them, or using them to answer questions and not actually using their brain. But I decided that, I wasn't taking my revision guide in to start with, and now I really wish I was. But I decided that I was going to start taking notes in my revision guide, because my end goal anyway was to transfer my notes from my book into my revision guide. So I thought, why don't I just skip a process? First of all, if you don't want to do that, then that's fine, because transferring them from one book to another is a form of revision, as long as active and not just passively copying down notes. But using the revision guide made me realise that I didn't need to take down a lot of the information that I was already taking notes for, and it kind of made me listen to the teacher more, because the most important stuff was already in the textbook, and I just highlighted random things like, key things that the teachers would, really emphasise. I was like, okay, yep, highlight that, that's important. But I decided, I did it in pen, but if you're not comfortable with writing in a revision guide, I obviously use a pencil, or even the post-it notes that I also recommended you take in. Especially if there's not enough room, or you're going into great detail about something, the post-it note is quite good. So by using the revision guide as like my main source of writing down notes, I made sure that I could already know the key information, because the teacher's giving it to me and I already know it's in the textbook, so I can actually actively listen to what they're saying and not just passively copy it down. But also, when they say something like extra, I can immediately just draw a line off from where the textbook's talking about that subject and annotate that on, instead of trying to write down absolutely everything they're saying and, probably missing some of the additional points. So in the revision guide, I also wrote down examples next to like where they would talk about an equation. So in physics, they might have a certain equation in a triangle, and I would just write down a quick little example, such as like a car travelling at this speed for this amount of time travels this distance, something like that. It also helped in chemistry, because I know the this is triple, but I think it's like the hydrocarbons or something. My brain's fried now. I don't know chemistry anymore. But there were these really long chains. What was it? Condensation, polymerization. There we go. I know it. Or there was another one as well, polymerization. But I found the textbook was quite confusing explaining that, so adding a little post-it note there and writing a little example that was already on the board really helped. Because say if I wrote it down in my book, I might forget to put it in my revision guide and then come back to my revision guide to revise and not understand the example. So inevitably in class you will also do mocks or practice papers or practice questions, something of the sort. You probably will, and you probably maybe already have done. But what I did for those is I wrote down where I got the marks. Say it's a 6-mark question, I would write a little tick or a little 1 in a circle where I got a certain mark for that question, and even maybe annotate it if it's not too clear, but normally I just tick it because it'd be like fact, and it'd be like, yeah, that's right, that's a mark. Also, say if I didn't get all the marks, I would write down where I missed the marks or the possible answers. Even if I got full marks, I would write down everything that the spec said. It helped me understand what the specification wanted me to talk about. When I went back and looked at my mocks and my practice papers, I could just look at the coloured pen, the marking pen that I had written down, which is more organised than my scruffy answer that I'd given in a couple of minutes. So after class or long term, so in the evenings, at the weekends, I would do 3 main things, and that is flashcards, mind maps and practice papers. So those 3 things worked the best for me. So flashcards I would make, say after a lesson, or look back in a revision guide at a particular topic that I didn't understand very well, and try and condense all of the information onto 1 or maybe 2 if it's a really complex topic, maybe 2 flashcards. If I couldn't put it down to that precise amount, then I needed to work on it. What would eventually end up happening is the flashcards would have prompts that would then spark other ideas in my mind. So say instead of writing down the whole electromagnetic spectrum, write down a little acronym or a rhyme or something that you can do to remember that instead of the long series. Yeah, condensing the information really helped. A, to fit it on the flashcards, and B, so that you're constantly actively revising and actively learning different processes in a quick way. The acronyms also work out so that, say in an exam, you get a 6-mark question on that, you could just quickly write down that little phrase that you've learned, and that sparks a whole load more new ideas that you can then use to answer the question. So mind maps, they became my main source of revision. So this was me personally, obviously, but the way I did it was quite simple, but people seem to really wonder how to make them, how to keep them really concise. Because I think what tends to end up happening is when you make a mind map, you put the topic in the middle, and then they go on to write down single words, and that did not work for me because A, you run out of space really quickly, all the space gets taken up by lines and not actual content, but B, when you're looking at a textbook and you've got a whole paragraph of information, it's really hard to condense that into one word. As good as that might sound, to condense all the information to that small of amount, it sometimes just can't be done. So the way I did it, and I kept it really simple, is that I used an A4 blank piece of paper, so literally got some out of the printer, used some of that, and I put the title in the middle, highlighted it, so it's nice and big, nice and bold, and then so I use the CGP textbooks, and if you do the same, you know that at the top of each page there's the title, and I would write down that would be my little subheadings, they come off from the centre, and then around that I would do 3, maybe 4 lines max, and do really concise little couple of sentence paragraphs. I don't want to say paragraphs, but they're like little bullet points. So say again the electromagnetic spectrum, and the first half would be on one page and the second half would be on another page, so I'd have 2 little subheadings for that. So the first half of the electromagnetic spectrum, can't even say it anymore, I would do, say, microwaves, and I would put that as the top of my paragraph, and then just a quick bullet point list, draw an arrow from the subtopic, and there we go, it's done. And I would do that around my mind map, and that would be how I did it. I kept it really, really simple, and I only used 3 things. So I used my black ballpoint pen, my blue pen for, say, if I'm drawing a diagram of a leaf, I would then annotate with blue pen, just so that the annotations didn't get mixed up with the information I was drawing off from the subtopic. And then I would also use a highlighter just to highlight the subheadings and the headings, and maybe even equations, or mark out where core practicals are, because obviously the core practicals do contribute quite a bit to your exams, at least for me they did. So highlighting where they are so you can just quickly go back to the mind map really helped. So then practice papers. So we did do some in class, but I also did some at home, and again the CGP workbook had questions in that I would go through as well. Basically whatever you can get your hands on to make sure that you're familiar with how the examiner is going to mark your work, because if you go into that exam and you don't know how you're going to get 6 marks in a 6-mark question, you've not done enough practice papers. Okay, so lastly, before an exam, so this is the night before, you're probably feeling a little bit stressed out, to say the least, because it's an exam. You're gonna feel nervous. That's normal. But the worst thing that you could do is stress yourself out even more by going through absolutely everything and anything that you can find. So going through all of your old exercise books, all of your old textbooks, all these random things that you've made since year 9. Don't do that. Don't cram everything. Pick the worst topics and just quickly read through the textbook, read through your annotations, read through your notes, whatever you've made. If you've done the same as me, I read through my mind maps and used the flashcards as a final bit of active recall. Make sure I knew, everything, because once you're reading through a mind map for a while, your brain switches off. So I didn't do that for too long, because I actually found that making the mind maps themselves was great for me, because I learnt a lot from writing down. If you're not like that, then don't spend hours copying out random things, it's not going to work for you. Find out whether you're a writer, whether you're a listener, so maybe you listen to certain videos. You also might be better at doing flashcards. Whatever stimulates your brain so that you know that you're working. You probably feel it, because you know when you like read a book, you're reading a page and then you get to the bottom of the page and you don't remember what you've read. If that happens when you're reading a mind map, don't do it, because it's not an effective use of your time. Before an exam, don't do any excessive revision, don't stress yourself out too much. I did some gentle exercise, so I walked my dog, I did some yoga, did a quick workout, something to keep my mind busy, to keep me feeling better about myself, and also get an early night. Can't stress that enough. If you go into that exam and you're yawning and you're, got bags under your eyes and you're dragging your feet, you're not going to do as well as if you've had a good night's sleep. I got an early night, or tried to, and eventually you'll fall asleep. But if you stay up on your phone, then A, your quality of sleep is going to be worse, and B, you're just going to be stressing out more because you might stay up and just keep reading and reading and reading. It's not going to do you any good. And then lastly, on the actual morning of the exam, me and my friends would like quiz each other, just like gently, not like whole reels of information, but just like active recall, like what is the powerhouse of the cell, and also talking to people and not, isolating yourself, talking to others, because everyone's in the same boat. Realizing that everyone's as nervous as you are can really help you out. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Just wanted to share how I revised, because a lot of people were panicking, a month, a couple of weeks before the exams, and I really don't want you to be in that situation. If you like the video, then please subscribe and like and leave a comment to say if you have tried out these techniques or if you use different ones. Let me know. I'm really interested, because obviously I am doing A-levels. If there's something new that I want to try out, then I will. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all later. Bye!